Still not really. I mean, I've started moving some of my Confederate units around, but I noticed something in here that I had forgotten about when I did the intro. Because this uses second edition rules, there's some additional optional rules. I think I went into one of them. Damned if I can remember what it was. God damn it. My mind is not holding things as well as it should be. But there's this other one, troop density level, which essentially you can't just press through the enemy forces the way Grant was able to in Mississippi Fortress if the enemy has a certain level of troop density. Essentially, freeing your units up and getting this initiated combat marker or whatever that allows you to move out of an area, well, that doesn't allow you to move closer to the enemy's home area. Which means you can't just say, hey, I stuck around and fought, I made my way through the enemy lines. It's an optional rule, and I'm going to play with it here because I think it's actually pretty vital in this one. It may actually screw up Mississippi Fortress. It may make it difficult for the Union to play that better, but I'll tell you this much. It means that defense that I put, in particular, the fact that Grant is kind of loose from his own home area, means that there probably has to be, and maybe there is, a second edition revision to the specific rules to handle that. Because, and it may just say you shouldn't play with this, or Grant is not affected by this or something. Because the point is that he's loose from his command, from any home base at all. And these rules actually have to do with the two home bases. So Grant would be able, the way the rules are worded, you can fall back towards your own home base. You cannot advance on the enemy home base if these densities are in place. And basically the concept is the enemy has a strong enough line in your way that if you don't break him, he is blocking you. And I think that makes a lot of sense overall. The question is, of course, does the specific scenario in Mississippi Fortress actually annul that? And I don't know, but I think it definitely applies in most of the games here, because if you have enough forces, you would prevent the enemy. You would be able to block the enemy, even though you don't have cav to block them or whatever, you know. Other is okay, and Lee has decided to commit Magruder to trying to get into Mechanicsville as Jackson's forces move down. They're a little slow. The reason being the positioning of them means that there's no easy force march situation. I could force march away from these guys, but that's kind of painful, and they can't force march because of where Jackson is. You know what I can do? I can put Jackson there, leave him back there so that more forces are going. And then I have an extra couple counters I could have set up with. What's important about the initial setup counters is I don't have to match the actual forces. I just have these available. So I'm able to create a little bit more uncertainty, at least by my reading of the rules. I may be mistaken about that. Okay, and we have our first attack here on Mechanicsville. And I kept Lee back here. Why? Yeah, that's a good question. There's no real great reason for it. But he's not doing any harm by being back here. But it's important that I send Magruder in because he's my leader. You know, let me make sure he's a 2-point leader, otherwise he can't force. Yeah, he's got a 2-point attack, so he can force his way into here, only has to fight one round. It's like Grant, right? He can make that bridge crossing, and then we're in pretty good shape. These little, on this later game, attack order, defend order things, so I'm showing them off now. I probably won't use them. I'll just, you know, put these things like this, because honestly, that level of hiding doesn't really help me. I kind of know what's going on, but I know what people are doing. What we've got is Magruder hitting here. Now the unit back here is actually an artillery. I want it with me. I sent an artillery down here, but I want it with me because artillery is valuable in holding the positions. I'm still going to have to cut through these riverline swamp creeks, basically, or whatever, unless I'm going to go way out of my way, which I probably can't do because I got to keep in contact with Lee. I would have to create this line of communication protecting with units, and my cav are going up here to help join with Jackson, which might have been a mistake. I might have been better supported to keep them, down in here. I've got dummy cav there to try to fake that, but whatever. All right, I'm not going to go through. If you want to see how the regular combat works, we'll go through. You can take a look at Mississippi Fortress, but I'm gonna just handle it as is. Screwed up. I grabbed the assault chit. I wanted the advanced chit instead. I probably should have gone with the diversionary, but this is what I chose in my mind. And this actually worked out pretty well, even with the halved strength on both the combat tables. We ended up causing 2 casualties to the Union, marked here, 1 casualty to Longstreet's division. This is kind of weird because this is marked optional. There is no Longstreet's over here, and that's kind of cool because it is the same unit, it's just who's commanding it. The units over here are for the optional game. It's kind of not easily... Oh yeah, it is. It says optional units here. So these are if you have the wing commands set up already and everything, which Lee did not have in place yet. So we have made our way into Mechanicsville. There's no opportunity for a second round of combat. So there's really, well, there's still a reason to withdraw, which is you don't want to leave your units there and have them keep fighting. And this is actually a problem, except that I could declare a general withdrawal, which I think would legitimately work. Depends on whether 5th Corps' command is up here. I probably should have left, but I can do the general withdrawal and thereby get out of there. Have to see the rules on that. Otherwise, I'm kind of stuck fighting at Mechanicsville, where it doesn't look good for me anymore. It's not that bad. These guys are still halved. They're still in a condition where they have crossed the swamp. Until and unless they get control of Mechanicsville, they're reduced. Victory point wise, though, the Confederates jumped to a quick lead. And I think we are done with the Confederate side of the first turn. There is no separate marker there. I mark casualties on a simple battle like this way. Sometimes I use paper, as I did in the others, for more complex battles. But now we're on the Union side of the turn, and we see what McClellan wants to do, and he's probably going to trigger his change of base, get it moving as quickly as possible. Because so one of the things that this quick move does is it immediately triggers that change of base, and that may not be such a wise idea because it's going to be harder for the Confederates to interfere with Jackson back here. But there are problems with coordination, and I thought maybe Magruder can do this, kind of on his own and let Jackson be the outflanking force. Okay, I figured out what the 2 other dummy Union counters are for. They're for the supply train to cover for that. They should actually be linked directly to it instead of having a Union symbol on them, but whatever. I was also wrong about the Grant takes command. That isn't the Wilderness Campaign itself, it's after the Wilderness Campaign, after the North Anna is crossed. So it may be covered in Lee versus Grant towards the end of the game, but it's not the whole Wilderness Campaign. Obviously, there's a lot more way above this, so it would only be the back end of it anyway, but I think it's actually fairly deep into when the Union gets into the Richmond area and is trying to cut off Petersburg. And that also contains a scenario for the Battle Above the Clouds, which I actually have the MMP Great Campaigns of the American Civil War version of. I would like to get Autumn of Glory, but so far, I don't know if I'm even subscribed to it on BGD to keep an eye on when it comes up. There are so few games in this series, but I kind of like this series. Certainly more than Great Campaigns, but anyway. I also discovered what the rule that I couldn't remember was, which is the general retreat rule was the other optional rule. And I had actually alluded to it, but there were two optional rules. One is the general retreat, one is, and now I can't remember that one. Crap. Shit me. My brain is really not working well still. I mean, there's the optional weather. There was another optional rule. Oh, the troop density, which was the one that I had forgotten about completely. I kind of had the general retreat in mind without really thinking too much about it. But the general retreat, if I did that to get this out of here, I would have to withdraw the entire Union Army. Obviously, I don't want to do that, but I'm okay with sticking around here. I don't really want to leave because the Confederates are at a disadvantage if they try to push me out. They still have the swamp problem. Not as bad as they did. They can get their artillery into play, but I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll look it up. But McClellan is going to switch his base. And what I do in order to do that is I give 10 victory points, and I select my dummies, and I'm going to make Charles City Courthouse my target base. We're also going to sail our boat. One of the major things I'm going to do is try to protect and keep the Confederates from interfering with the transfer and focus on the transfer, because there isn't a lot that's going to cost me points. And the base is now moved. I only have to... Now, this is kind of a problem because this line is somewhat set up to defend this. And I kind of have to keep it as I move until I get, to here or so. But it means my non-entrenched units can kind of pull out a little bit more easily. But I have to worry about a southern push in this direction, so... the fact that I've got 4 of these counters on here means that I'm not faking it, I think. I think if I had only put 3 of them down there, I could have put a dummy here instead, and that would probably be wiser. So let me see. See, this is dangerous. Let's not put this here. So let's put the dummy base here. Keep the Confederates guessing a little bit better. Oh, I need to roll to see how many core points I have to use. Okay, so I've got 4 core points for this turn. Now, remember, they cost 2, and since McClellan is back here, he's not right adjacent to these, so it's going to cost me 2 to move the supply trains. We'll get them moving. I think they can only move 1 place per turn, unless I want to take my double turn. Shit, I don't have. One area per turn, yeah, by road. So I could push. So my crossings are all here, but unfortunately, I don't have a lot of road. I don't know what to do with this. But yeah, that'll be my initial move. And that means I have no road movement for the cav, but I think the cav can move too. Now, this terrain is the defensible terrain. This was not. That's nice, because I didn't take that into account. And I'll keep, that was 2 of my core that I can move. So the terrain is not easy to see, but this is that rough terrain. I can see, I think. Because defensible is just the woods in there. This has some kind of ridge line in there. It's really not clear, but I think that's what it's intended to express. Much done in the Union turn. I mean, yes, I'm beginning to scatter these guys. Here, a little bit of shifting here out of Savage Station to try to cover southward, but also looking like I'm trying to cover northward as well. So I've got stacks moving in both directions, my 2 other corps basically, along with some auxiliary units. This is still here. Porter's still holding this. I haven't been able to activate him. He's going to cost me 2 commands to move out of there. And right now, that doesn't seem worthwhile. And I forgot to even move my damn boats. Let's do the naval rolls. I don't remember exactly how they work for this one, so we can shift them up and then let's see, and then we fire at the batteries. Let's take a look at what the charts look like for this. So the shore battery would get a shot at us, and we get to shoot back and see if we can kill one of these. So we'll just sail up here. This is all it does, and the Confederates get to roll on the shore battery table. And that killed one of our ships. There goes the satellite, which is worth 3 victory points for the Confederates. And that's all that happens, is I just lose a ship. But the Union now has 5 gunboats. If I get a D, if I get a 6, I get to take out one of their batteries. I can get a lot of victory points off of this if I can get a gunboat up there, but it's an iffy thing, and it may not be worthwhile. Okay, so we're still there. That's just a single round, and nobody's cut off or anything. So, and yeah, I'm taking this real slow. We move here to June 25th p.m. The scale of this game is different from most of the others in the series. That's why there's only 1 round of battle. That's why there's so many tiny little areas. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see. There aren't enough Union troops here. I know what's there to prevent me from just pushing through. But the problem is then I'd be facing a bigger stack of units over the same kind of swamp thing. So if I can push around through here, something cool could happen. But I gotta keep pushing in order for that to work. And I'm a little worried about being able to arrange that properly. So that's one consideration to take into play. Another is I could just sit here and, you know, try to pummel these Union units. They're weak. They weren't reinforced. I still have the swamp, the river swamp crossing penalty on me, which I think is just having my troops. But I should get better numbers with the artillery in place. Elsewhere, geez. Well, I'm not sure how to cut these guys off. I want to make some kind of movement in this direction to cover and prevent the Union change of base. But with me having shifted up here, I'm not sure that I can do that easily. Now I can of course just withdraw back behind the river, but it could be a fake. It could be a head bluff. And then, you know, what's happening? Well, I haven't gained many victory points on the Union total. And I will want to, well, so here's the thing. The 10 points goes away if this is a fake. So I'm in the lead at that point. But I would like to accumulate more. So I have to be kind of careful and not just withdraw entirely. And I have to think about this a little bit. Some of those considerations may be which units are Longstreet's corps, which units are Jackson's are able to be attached to Jackson, stuff like that. What you notice is the straggler loss chart for this set of the rolls is a little different. It relies on the amount of strength that's in a given unit, which makes sense. The bigger the unit, the more it should lose in stragglers from forced marching. That was not in the Mississippi Fortress game. It may have been updated in the second edition of the game. I'm not sure. And everybody's moved. We're going to handle, we decided to keep Magruder in place there. Did some shifting around here to try to balance the forces and get something that can intervene against that supply base if it's happening. Trying to get forces into play that'll align with Jackson over there. It's going to take a long time for Longstreet to have his own division. So, but Magruder's launching an attack. He's doing the advance again, but this time we're going to try to withdraw the 2nd Division. We'll take straggling losses if we come down this way. And we may not need to do that. We may be able to go here because that's open, and then just fall back from there. However, the problem is this is 5th Corps. That would mean I'd need to activate 5th Corps, and I would rather not do that. So maybe the straggler losses are worth more, and I can try to recover them, assuming that the Confederates won't just come charging through harder. It's a hard call. Magruder got some good results there. He caused 3 Union casualties. That's bringing the Confederate victory points way up, close to the Union ones. And this was with the Union withdrawing, so they're out of there. They took a straggle check and did not lose anything. They're down to like 2 strength points, though. That unit is no longer effective, actually, which will be 3 more victory points that I have not yet accounted. And I should do something to mark that effectiveness has been lost. That's problematic. That means there's a number of restrictions on that unit. It can't take certain kinds of orders. Porter has taken some pretty big hits because of that. I am not marking this with the swamp crossing any longer. It's not really clear the way the rules are written. Remember, these Clash of Arms rules are kind of vague in a lot of places, that I'm not forever penalized by that river crossing by being in here. But common sense dictates I've gotten control of the area. I should never have to face that again with those units until they move and start doing other stuff. And I think that throws me over to the Union side of the turn. Well, got a nice another good die roll, and moving my supply wagons, also shifting forces downward to cover the line here. And I pulled Porter out of Ellison's mill here, but I sent some dummies up here to Bethesda Church, and that kind of creates a scarier looking situation for the Confederates than the reality is. All my dummies are on the map. They could figure that out, but yeah. Just looking at my commanders here. Really want to get Hooker in charge here instead of Heinzelman, right? No, Heinzelman is... Oh no, that's Keyes. Heinzelman is down here. He sucks. Oh, and McClellan. I want to keep McClellan here because that gives him command of these units. This is getting too far away, though, and that's kind of a problem. So now I can't order those to move very easily. But this is my new base, so I got a lot of space to play, and the engineers are here. They could throw a pontoon bridge up and make it a little easier on the wagons to move if need be. So far, I don't think I need them, so I'm not really trying to build extra bridges, etc. Remember, all the bridges down here are out at the beginning of the game. But I've got my route covered, is the whole real key. And I can get rid of this because the Union didn't move in there. That gets us through to the 3rd turn, June 26th. About these, this one especially because it's fairly short, actually. But even with the Mississippi Fortress, there's a fair number of counters, but in terms of the number of counters, the size, the amount of board and everything like that, it kind of feels like a magazine game to me. Like, you know, the late era SPI, S&Ts were, and then some of the more modern magazine games, which is kind of one thing is there's a lot of really good stuff in those mag games. They tend to be spotty, but in terms of the size and certainly the amount of detail, etc., that the game provides, I'm not really sure that these are all that much more meaty, as it were. They just come with a box, you know, and it's not even a big box, so it's kind of like the SPI thin boxes that the magazine games ended up in. A little confused. I forgot to roll the gunboats. Actually, nothing happened anyway, so it worked out the same. And then I put the Union dice up here. It should be the beginning of the third turn Confederate dice, so we'll get them moving. Don't press any more attacks, but you can see they're forming a real line. You know, sort of a solid control of the areas. There's no such thing in this game, really. It's a Civil War game. You just don't have the troop density in general. There's a lot of dummies in there and everything. For the Union, let's see. You know what? I forgot to roll the weather. Good. Otherwise, I'd have a problem. And for the Union, still a pretty good command roll. 4 corps to move. Cost me 2 for these. That'll give me play for a couple more. 5-point bonus if I can keep the Union across the Chickahominy. So this strong position at Gainesville, it's a seductive thing to have. On the other hand, if I shift some of the forces down, maybe I can make a threat on the Richmond garrison area. You can see Richmond itself is empty. That's kind of an interesting sign. That means there's probably real stuff down here. So I don't know if I want to push that or just hope the boats can push through on their own. I'm having trouble with that decision. It kind of impacts everything. And I've got, like, you know, if I move these guys, I don't have another corps I can move. So I can't shift something else down. So that's kind of an issue. There's a lot of little areas in this game. And the Union's in trouble. I just lost 2 more gunboats. That's a lot of victory points. The Confederates are back here. I basically kind of held the line everywhere. That means I'm not going to be able to get victory points from Richmond unless I can launch an attack to take out the 2. Don't want to damage this map. It's pretty, even if it's a pain in the ass. To take out the 2 bluff locations, and that's going to be almost impossible. I would have to get my engineers and get a crossing that way, and that would be, I think, pretty damn difficult. So I'm going to pull my boats back. I don't know what they can do. Maybe get them over here on this river to provide some fire support. Although Magruder did well enough in this campaign, he is not a great defensive commander, so I'm swinging both units that I can, and it's kind of annoying. Whiting and D.H. Hill over to Jackson's command. Now they're out of range, which means they're going to be somewhat limited. I have to do some shifting to get that all into play. But I'm going to start moving Magruder's command down here because I feel like I got to cover shit down here, and that the pursuit up here is kind of less important. The problem with all that is I got to get the Union out of the north of the Chickahominy. And I'm not sure I can guarantee that. Much as McClellan wants to leave there historically, the game kind of says, hey, no real need. Although the rivers could become problematic for that. They're feeling pretty comfortable overall, but weather's still good. Like I said, I had the conversions. And I'm shifting down to cover this, supposedly. I did a cav probe here, got rid of a couple of these dummy units, but I still don't know that it's clear. But it looks a hell of a lot more likely that it is. I could have left the cav around and launched an attack. I don't see any purpose to that. Rather, move the infantry in there. We'll see, you know, if the Union stacks change significantly. That might be something I want to consider. I want to consider not doing. But if there's just a couple of units in there or something, or if these guys look like they moved up, well, then I feel pretty safe. But the thing is, I can't really tell what the Union's doing. The hidden movement in this game is feeling a little bit more, I don't know, it was an impact in Mississippi Fortress. It's feeling like a bigger deal here to me. Let's make our quick roll for what the McClellan table, basically. If I can find it. I think it's only in the rule book. Interesting. All right. I would have thought that was in there. And he's got another big roll, another 4 units. And again, you know, we're noticing not all, oh, oops, shouldn't be leaving this showing. That's the kind of error that can screw you in the game. If you forget to unflip to flip a counter or something, that, you know. But this shouldn't have ever been face up in a 2-player game. There was something I wanted to say. I don't remember what it was. I don't know. McClellan's getting a lot of movement, that much I know. But again, I probably can't cut through here, so I don't have enough gunboats to take out any of the fortifications, and that's going to be a problem. So I want to get out of there. And the Union falling back a little bit. I actually had a cav here. I could have tried to prevent the Confederates from screening me as much with, but wagons moving their way downward. I feel pretty comfortable with everything. I'm going to stay at Gainesville as long as I think I possibly can. I don't know how long that is, but I am shifting down for the attack on Richmond. If a significant amount of the Confederate forces operating in this direction, I may be able to get some leverage against Richmond, which would do me a lot of good. Right. That's probably it for tonight. I don't know for sure. I might wander back up, but that's the end of turn 5. And you might want to delay launching that Confederate attack because the Union feels like it's in a pretty safe place in terms of getting its supply wagons down now, because Jackson wasn't around to threaten things much, and I don't know. Feeling like I'm kind of in a worse position than I'd like to be in with the Confederates here. All right. Someone mentioned how they couldn't see soloing this very easily. And I think I agree if you play your solo games where you just sit down and you play. I think that would be harder. If I did that, I'd have to roll some dice. You know, making decisions based on, yeah, I don't know the answer to this. Let's come up with some immediate plans that make sense from what I can see. So here I'm looking at the Confederate position, and I don't know whether this is real or not, but here's what I do know. I do know that the Union is moving down here. Now I got to make a decision whether to try to clear the Union from back here, where Gaines Mill is hard to take, or cut through here or maybe somewhere else and try to cut off those supply wagons. I'm in favor of cutting off the supply wagons. There's a lot more points in that. However, I'm in the lead in victory points, which is to say if I could clear this, I might still end up ahead by doing that. I like the bigger option better, especially since Gaines Mill looks scary to me. But if that's empty, I'm making clearly the wrong decision. So I'll probably want to do probing and try to, clear that out. But I don't want to fight that if that's a core. And it is. What I want to do instead is try to force the Union out of that position through maneuver. And I would rather hit them where they're weaker down here. So I'm going to concentrate on getting Magruder down here. Now that means Jackson's not that valuable with his, he's got really good ratings. But anyway, in terms of one of the things that the solo play, why it might work better for me, is I don't sit down and just play the game. I kind of know where things are. I have a fairly good idea, and I do make some die rolls to make decisions within that. But I also walk away. I play a turn, and I'm done, for a couple hours at least. A lot of people don't like to play that way. That's what I've kind of morphed into, especially with these smaller games. It's a habit that I got into with the bigger games, maybe, but I don't know. My Cav face up last time after I probed. They probed here. They withdrew afterwards, so they probed here, found some more blanks. And they're still not certain, but they're pretty sure that if there's a real force, it's only at Gainesville. We'll see if the Union decides. If the Union has infantry here, they may decide to attack it, but it can just withdraw if they do that, and that would give the Confederates information. Of course, the Union can't pull out of that space, which is one reason to leave the Cav there. And we've got Jackson pressing down over here. Magruder setting up a big line of, I don't know what's there, Are these weakly defended for this to be a hammer? Or is there sort of a strong defense? Can the Union launch an attack against Richmond? That's all kind of unknown to McClellan, But he's got his 10 points, and he's behind in victory points. He's not going to be able to get Richmond bombardment points because the boats were turned back. So now he's kind of in a position where either he has to defeat the Confederates if they attack him, or McClellan has to get active and try to take Richmond. Little Mac got a bad die roll this time. He ended up only getting 2 activities. He swapped a couple of corps here. He's trying to prepare himself for the fight to the south that he thinks is the most likely to work. Again, though, if these are lightly covered, there's a chance that he could get through there. So maybe he wants to shift his Cav down. I don't know. He could have probed this turn anyway. And the Cav is giving him, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm gonna create some dummies and shift that Cav down into position so I can do a probe to one of these two. See if I can launch an attack, maybe straight in next turn. What it did mean was my supply wagons didn't move. Boat's still moving. Get into position to protect Gainesville. Something silly happened, and I could not find Cook, my other Cav unit. Let's just throw some more of these here to make this look scarier. I couldn't find Cook's Cav. It had fallen down on the floor and escaped the battlefield entirely. So I positioned it where I wanted it. It would have been able to move to where it is without a problem. And yeah, so now I guess we move on to the next game turn. And I wish I had my dates open because I'm curious, because we're getting to about the time where, Seven Pines and might be happening. Let's see. See if we got, they usually give us a nice one. Mechanicsville on the 26th. We hit it a little early. Gaines Mill should have happened today. But the Confederates are being a little slow north of the river, even though it's important. Savage Station on the 29th. That's back here. The Confederates cutting around behind the Union line. And that's not going to happen anytime soon. I don't have the Seven Pines in here. Interesting. That's interesting to me. I thought that counts as one of the bigger battles, but they may have it. They may be referring to it here as Garnett's and Golden's Farms. And then with Malvern Hill, of course, being the end of that campaign where the Union's protecting their supply wagons at the end. But yeah, this is developing definitely very differently than the historical situation. They could have launched an attack this turn, but they decided to hold off. They're facing too big a stack here, in their opinion. The calf probe here cleared that out. There was nothing there. Jackson, the main thing with Jackson is he's delaying to get a somewhat fatigued Winder's division into play in Garnett's artillery. And it feels like if he wants to hit this, he wants to do it preferably with most of the forces coming from here. And, you know, with most of his force, because if this is a corps, that's going to be kind of an ugly fight, especially if I have to do any kind of stream crossing through the swamps or anything. So I'm willing to like let the Union escape from there, give me my 5 points if they want to preserve their troops. But if I want to fight them, I'm going to do it as hard as possible. And then once this is clear, I've got kind of an opening to try to start to circumvent. The problem with that, well, I got to keep my supply lines open, but they tighten up a little bit if I have this. You know, if I can cut around to Savage Station, wow, that's really degrading that Union line. Given that and how big this looks, and obviously I don't want to go against either of these if they're full core. I'm afraid of those entrenchments. They reduce damage each round on each line position. That's painful sounding. What I want to do is I want to force the Union out of them and make them fight, preferably in not great terrain. But I'm going to have to hit them in good terrain. There's too much defensible here. And now let's see what Little Mac's got to play with. I swear I had... Here it is. Yeah. I swear that, you know, I knew there had to be something in there, but I couldn't find it earlier. And he's only got 3 commands this time. That's, you know, where does he want to take his chances? He feels like he has to launch the attack, but he may not be in position yet. Probing here might be his best move. He's got his cav in position to do that, so that may be our first action. The Union probed this twice, and they found a whole bunch of stuff, more than they wanted to face. So Little Mac moved his supply wagons and did a little bit more shifting of his forces to get his corps in position for a possible attack on the overland here. And I had better get myself a dummy there, just to make it look like I got a solid line. A lot of dummies in the line. But yeah. And the boat's continuing to move. It's not going to get there in time, you know. This is, Jackson's going to hit this before that boat makes it, but maybe it'll provide some defense further down the river. I'm not even sure I can defend up there, so that's okay. Alrighty, that puts us to the next turn. And things go bad. It starts to rain. That means next turn these bridges are going to be out and unavailable for use. I'm lucky I didn't deploy any pontoons or anything like that. It also means for combat, the CIC is lower. That's not terrible. Stragglers are more painful, and that's pretty much it. So it doesn't prevent an attack, and I think this is not a terrible time for the Confederates to launch their attack to the south. I'm not sure they want to do it. It's so frightening to do, right? You know, the Union has all their victory points. Do I want to take aggressive action? If I can take Gaines Mill out of the equation, I don't really need to do much. I can just hold my position and get the win. But McClellan's not in a great position here. If I can destroy the Army of the Potomac sitting here, you know, heading down back to the peninsula, well, geez, that's a lot bigger deal. And Lee would get a major feather in his cap for his first campaign. He didn't just defend Richmond. He put some serious pressure. Now, historically, he did put pressure on the Union, but he didn't manage to destroy the army, obviously. Here, I'm feeling those same temptations. You know, do I go for the sure win, which may be almost inevitable for the Confederates. If they choose to play a defensive game, I'm not sure they can lose this scenario. Or do I go for something a little bit more impressive? Now, what I don't want to do is weaken my position, which means I almost invariably have to launch my attack here. Because anything else, you know, if I start swinging here, I'm opening things up too much. Chickened out. I just determined I don't have enough troops. I mean, I would have to strip this bear or this bear and open up the way to Richmond. I can't afford it. I just can't afford it. I can launch everything from here. I feel fairly safe with that. I could pull these guys back here. But I just do not have the forces to hold the line and launch an attack that could handle 2 corps there. And I'm assuming there's 2 corps there. Here, I'm assuming the Union has 1 corps in each of these. That seems to make sense numerically. So, yeah, I gotta hand off, you know, and hope Jackson can bust through there. He's my best leader. Yeah, it's crappy terrain, but it's better than, I mean, it's not that much more terrible than this, I guess. I don't know. This is bad. But yeah, I just can't face the entrenchments with full units in them, and I can't take the risk. And yeah, I feel more like McClellan than Lee doing that, but maybe McClellan will be more like Lee and launch that attack. And no, McClellan doesn't have it in him either. Oh, I ought to be doing something with these. Let's get these guys out of here. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm throwing my supply wagons. I'm trying to make it look like I'm moving my supply wagons. In actuality, I've shifted another pair of corps. I only had 1 for my die roll, which only gave me 2 commands. That puts us here on the Confederate turn. And yeah, we're going to take a little break for a while. Okay, another turn of rain, which means the bridges are going to be out again. And this is a dangerous time for, I think it's Porter I got up here. He's the best of my, he's the best of my defensive Union commanders. So Jackson may be able, if Jackson's able to get a victory here, it could be a decisive one because Porter's kind of stuck up against a river he can't get away from. However, he's on very good terrain. His defensive options are limited by being out of command, but that's okay. That's okay. Let's not expose Mac. For the Confederates, they have an issue here. Among them, moving units over to Jackson. Now I've got the same choice with Longstreet, moving a couple of units to create a corps, essentially, for Longstreet. It seems like a good idea. Longstreet's a better commander than Magruder. It allows me to operate with multiple wings that all have commanders, conceivably. The problem is the game imposes some limitations on the Confederates mixing commands, especially if Jackson's involved in it. And it means that you have to spend effort to get those forces into place. You're reorganizing your army on the fly during a battle. Wow. I still think it's worth it. So I'm going to try to get Jackson's command, Longstreet's command together now. And, get another, basically try to set things up so that I have multiple strike forces available for if I can make a battle here. And that probably means I will not be launching an attack still, which I don't think I was really in the mood for anyway. Very hesitant. You know, again, Lee is acting more like McClellan here, right? McClellan reorganizing, you know, his army by shifting the supply base in the midst of the battle. Well, now Lee is reorganizing his army, splitting into more of a corps formation type thing, rather than pursuing the attack. But I've been unwilling to do the attack. You know? I'm too chicken shit. And is also out of command, which I believe impacts him just as much. And because I had some artillery over here, I shifted that over rather than trying to cross this yuck. I want to be perfectly positioned. The rivers are going to be closed off next turn too. Let's just hold off a little longer. So, yeah, this is Union. Let's see what the Union gets. They get 3 commands, which has not been very good. I gotta make the decision, do I want to launch the attack? I'm gonna lose the game if I don't make some aggressive action on Richmond, I think. Unless I beat the Confederates back here and get some points on it, which is quite possible, quite possible. And McClellan's gonna do it. He's launching his attack there. We'll see what comes of it. I gotta look at the specific roles because, again, battles are handled a little differently here. There's a number of restrictions on both sides. Pre-reveal, it looks, you know, like this, but we got the Union using the kind of standard advance technique with the troop density table. I can't just push through here, even though I'd have a commander who's good enough. Well, it doesn't really matter. I have there's nothing that would make me retreat. So normally, under the base rules of this game, I'd be able to push into here next turn. So the Confederates basically would have to give up this space, or else drive the Union out, or be exposing Richmond, which obviously is no good. But with the density rules, this is defensible terrain, so they only need 12 strength points. They easily have that. Well, these actually aren't exposed until we choose a column to fire on. But yeah, we have 2 Union formations facing a split single Magruder's command there, which is why I would love to have Longstreet in place. He's what, a 2-3? Yeah, that would help a lot. Instead I have Magruder, who's a 2-1 in one of the 2 spaces. I think Lee is close enough. I could have done a counterattack or something like that. I don't want to do that. That would give up my defensible position, essentially. So, you know, we've got this area controlled. The Union could have tried some kind of outflank, but that would set them in a position where whatever command it is being thrown at risk, you know, of being completely cut off, which would be terrible. And I've got almost nothing holding this, which means the Confederates might be aware of how weak that looks and try to launch in. But here's the problem. They would have to get here as well to cut off the Union Army, and that's going to be hard. What I really like about this system is it makes you think at exactly the right level. It's like the perfect representation of operational actions, in my opinion. This is the problem with great campaigns of the American Civil War for me. I feel like I'm micromanaging too much. I'm looking at individual stacks and hexes and trying to figure out little geometrics to get through and everything. There are geometrics here, but they're on that right scale for the decisions that are being made in this game. You know, do I make that outflank? Do I deal with this terrain position, etc.? And it's one of the advantages of a well-designed area combat system, as opposed to, hey, let's just use this arbitrary hex grid on the map. And I feel like this actually really does a great job of it, in theory at least. Some of the problems, the representation on the map is difficult for me to assess. That's probably my biggest concern about it. And then that optional rule on the troop density, that fixes a big flaw that was present in the original rules. That was really driving me nuts. Anyway, we're figuring out the first, I'm just realizing that I'm giving you play-by-play on this game, and it feels absolutely right. It's I go, you go, so I get to see, large movements happening at once. I'm not like focusing on, do I move this, do I move that? And it's at this, the representation is just so damn in alignment with what's trying to, with the things you'd want to express about a campaign. Terrain, the Union was able to largely determine what the combat intensity was going to be. And by doing the advance, they could still get good firepower, but because the CIC goes down, they'll be on the 1 chart. Anything, they could pretty much guarantee that, because the advance versus stand is the 2. There's a 1 shift due to the rain, and they're pretty sure that Confederates aren't going to do a counterattack here. Now, the terrain, the defensive terrain, gives a shift to the left, but as long as we're on the 1 chart and we have reasonable odds, and we managed 1-to-1 in both cases, barely in one. Here we were at 29-28 actually. So it was kind of iffy. We weren't taking any losses. So the actual losses taken were 4 by the Confederates and 3 by the Union. A fairly inconclusive battle. There's plenty of Confederate units, so the Union is not going to be able to push through. They can still leave. They'll have the marker that says they could leave. And then the Confederates have the option of continuing to fight for this position. Like if they counterattack, to give themselves mobility, but they won't be able to punch through getting closer to the home base. And the Union could actually reveal something about their home base. So for example, it might be possible that this is closer than this to the home base because, well, maybe it's this one. In which case, yeah, the Confederates would be denied the capability to go forward, to go even into here. And likewise, they might be denied the ability to go here if White House is. I'd have to look and count all possible ranges. And it's one of the pains of the 2 optional rules that make the game work much better, but they do add some difficulty in terms of assessing, can you move here, can you not? So yeah, that is, I believe, the end of this turn. I don't remember if I mentioned this. I noticed that, hey, you can't go up the Chickahominy with the gunboats. In fact, you can go up the James, but only to White House. No, not the James. What the hell is this? The Rappahannock? I don't know. I can't really read it. It's like it's unreadable. And I'm not familiar enough with the terrain in Virginia here to be able to tell you. But yeah, you can travel most of the way up the James. Whatever the hell this river is, you can make it to White House. And it's worded here like this is not something that looks... It looks like the Pramuki or something like that. I don't know what the hell it's supposed to be. It's not one that I know. There's the North Anna here, and this is the South Anna. I don't know what this ends up being. Okay, but anyway, more rain, which means bridges are still going to be out, and there's no bridging, no way to get Porter out of here. Jackson's hitting him. I got swamp crossing markers on these guys. I brought Longstreet into the game. Magruder, I hope, can slip away, and he's taking command of D.R. Jones and S.D. Lee, some artillery, and thinking, hey, if the Union threw a big force in there, This may be open. It's time to crush in there. And I should have enough to hold this, but if I can break there, the Union's in a lot of trouble. And here's the thing. These guys, I don't have to do anything with them. You know, I could launch an attack to try to gain mobility with them, but as it stands, I don't actually need to do that. I can just hold that position. But I'm weakening things here, so what we may end up seeing is something where there's engagement on all fronts with Richmond at risk. Yeah, we're almost, yeah, I think we'll finish this video, send it up, because we're almost halfway through, well, we're more than halfway through the game, and yes, I spent a lot of time on other things, but I'll probably spend a lot of time babbling on other things later anyway, if I have the time. Okay, so we have a lot going on here in the battle for Gainesville. First of all, the Confederates are divided into two wings. The Union has positioned themselves in only one. They could position into two, but they only have one leader. Of course, so do the Confederates. So I don't know how that works. We have the coordination check. This is a straight roll here. We've got rain, we've got a lot of terrain. And some of the units are marked with swamp crossings to indicate that they crossed via the gully swamps and will suffer a penalty this round of combat. It'll go away after this round. It's not like the river swamp crossing. Let's see if the Confederates get both their wings in play. 4, center and 1 wing, so I'm able to attack with both wings. And at this point, yeah, now I'm going to launch from my center wing. And Jackson, doesn't matter that he was coming in from a swamp crossing, but Winder here is halved, I believe. Jeez. This is painful. Okay, so the gully swamp, no. It's an odd shift penalty on the CIB, and that's it. He's not halved. The rain is in play, which is another odds, which is a reduction in the intensity. And that's kind of cool. I still like the advance because that gives me a higher intensity. That gives me a higher intensity for the fire combat round, which is important. But I don't have to pay as much there. But I have to look at what I'm facing here, which is rough. Defending units are doubled when they're in this terrain type. Now, this is just rough. It's not rough defensible, even though it looks kind of like both. There's one formation, one basic terrain here, I think. I'm not sure. Because you see, there's some green shit in here, but, and because of the fact that the terrain key is not in color, it's really hard to tell, hey, is any green gonna count, or does it have to be this bushy stuff? They do say, regardless of any other terrain, but boy, is that iffy. I feel like there should be a central terrain type to any given location, and that's what it appears to represent, but it's hard to tell. So for example, this has some green little bushy stuff. This has a little less of it. This has almost none. Are there differences? I don't know. The map representation, again, is problematic. But I'm going to take it as though it's just rough, which means we're going to be looking at doubled Union forces. And what are we looking at for the CIC? Well, we're doing an advance versus a stand, which is your 2. That's going to drop down to a 1, and that may be good enough. These guys are full strength. Well, that was kind of shitty that I put this guy in here. I needed him for the strength, but what was the penalty again for crossing? Jesus. The CIC, only the CIC, so my firepower is still there. And importantly, I get my artillery in there, so we'll see how that works out. But we're facing Porter. We have Jackson, so we have the command advantage. That's there at least. And I've got, yeah, I got the US and CSA in the right place. All right, I'll come back with a report on what happened. In numbers, I should not have had the Union in one wing. So I've changed that so that they're in two wings. So instead what we've got is this, which is going to be 14 doubled is 28. And it's coming up with like 42 plus 6, and that's just ridiculous. So we're going to be handling this in two individual wing fights. And we are still going to stand. We don't want to withdraw because we got nowhere we can go. Yeah, everything's just bad. Okay, so, well, I'll show the calculations here. I've shown them in the other game that I played, but I haven't done it here. So what we have is 16 plus 4 to 28. Now, and that's from calculating the artillery strength and the terrain effects. Now, what we have was a 2 as our base combat intensity. That goes down to a 1 due to the rain. So the attacker was the 16 plus 4. He's only a 20 to 28. So that's going to be a 1 to 2 to begin with. A shift against with a 1, I take 1 Confederate loss. And I'm going to mark that like this. No die roll there. But now we have fire. And fire is also doubled for these guys, I believe. I believe it's all combat. Yeah. As long as they're not counterattacking. Never want to counterattack when you're in good terrain. So there we have a 20 for the Confederates, which sucks because that's just down on the chart. But we have some advantages. We have one of our cav units halved in strength, but that'll shift a column to the right for firepower. That doesn't affect over here, but it does affect on the firepower table. So we kind of come out even. So we're at 20. Shit. We took the column shift for the swamp crossing unit over here. Okay, so we're at 20, and do we have a shift in both directions? Is there some reason? I'm trying to remember if we have a shift against us. No, but we have a better leader, so we actually shift a second column. So we're at stand 20, boom, boom, all the way over to the best column. And we get a 3. That's going to be 1 Union loss over here. And then the Union gets to fire back, and they use their full strength as well of 28. And I don't think any shifts in any direction. And they caused 2 Confederate losses. Now we record these losses for this wing because each wing attack is taken separately, even if multiple units were striking that wing. So, over here to begin with, we take a look at the victory points. That's going to be 3 for the Union and 1 for the Confederates. Hey, look, we're tied. Uh-oh. Okay. And I have to mark the losses. I'll be back after I do that. Those, I didn't mark the Union ones. Those I marked here on this. And we've got a couple of straggles on Winder that I've never been able to recover. The game's just so short that I couldn't take the time. For the Union, it's the 1st and 2nd Division of 5th Corps. So we find 5th Corps, and this is just not too complicated. Whoa, 2nd Division had a lot of hits on it. What the hell? Okay, so that wasn't a 28. 2nd Division is ineffective. Shit. I gotta look that up. Okay, so we should... Oh, no, that's not for... All right. Sorry. 1st and 3rd Division. 2nd Division should be here because we had so many strength points. It turns out it's not that big a deal. Yeah, I'm doing all kind of crappy stuff, but... Okay, so... I was back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strength points from what I had which means I'm at 918. That meant the odds were not what they were, because it was 1-to-1 to begin with. Over here on the CIC, it was 1-to-1, a shift against at 1. We take away one of those Confederate losses. We lose a Union victory point, and I'll erase somebody from there, which I had better do now because otherwise I will not remember. I'll take that from Winder. Okay. All right. Now, so the impact of the ineffectual unit, it has a number of effects. I've gone over these in the initial, but it's hard to remember them. The ineffective units don't have a zone of control. They cannot force march. They can't do cav stuff. They cannot be deployed alone in their line position, and they may not gain any victory points. However, and they can't be given attack or counterattack orders. Ugh. What? Okay, that was the Union unit, which is fine. It's just standing. I couldn't have done a counterattack with it. Okay, so I did not violate any rules, even if I positioned things incorrectly because I couldn't remember these things. So that's, I guess, our numbering there, and I think we've taken care of everything except I forgot to take a hit on the 1st Division. Now, I cannot take these hits on the ineffective 2nd Division. I must take it on the 1st Division because you can't hit ineffective units before effective. Okay, we're going to leave this here so I remember it next time. It's supposed to be on the board. Okay. And now we shift to this next battle, which is everybody's in a swamp crossing, but that doesn't really matter. I thought we were having the strength for that. So here we have 25, assuming everybody's full. I think they are. They are. 25, 26 strength points, which I had better write down. With the cav bonus, because I've got one of Stuart's cav. You can tell by the little circle. I don't have the leader bonus here. The defenders do. They have a strength of 7, 14 plus, good God, a lot of artillery. Stand is probably tripled. No, quadrupled for the Union. So that's 12, doubled is 24. So I'm top of the chart with the Union. What was that? 14 plus 24, yeah. This is why I needed to be in 2 wings. And I could not split them into 3. So, in case you're wondering, gee, that corps could do a lot of damage in Gainesville. Yeah, it could, but it's not allowed to. So, now what we have is 26 hitting 30, 44. That works out to 1-2. And a pretty solid 1-2 this time with a shift against. This time, and since we've already taken the losses, we'll take the loss on the Confederates here. And now we get the gunfire, and both sides are big on the gunfire, as big as they can be on the advanced stand table, but both sides get a column shift in their favor. The Union for having a better leader, the Confederates for having the cav. We'll see what those work out as. They both got 1, and now I record the extra losses on the victory point chart and on the loss table. So the Confederates now have their little marker there so that they can leave the hex. The Union cannot, although it could actually withdraw, and it might be able to withdraw through here, conceivably. But as long as there's no river line that I can cross, I kind of don't want to. There might come a point where I want to drop back, but this is the best defensive terrain I can sit in. I may have to do an army retreat to get them out of there. Otherwise, I have to launch an attack in this terrible terrain. That is not something I want to do. Rough doesn't have any rules in and of itself about getting flung out of it. These locations, I believe, do. like in Mississippi Fortress, there were spaces where mountainous terrain where you were in, and you could not get out of. You could not leave. You could not. You couldn't stay in the space if you attacked. Kind of like river crossing, except I don't think the leader bonus allowed you to stick around and keep fighting. The Richmond Fortified Zone has additional changes, which is this area is all permanently entrenched, which is pretty cool, actually. It means you're not taking that shit very easily. And the Confederates were also going to launch an attack here, so let me set that one up. It turns out Little Mac does not have a core here, and that's a problem. So what he's going to do instead, he has Cav, is he's going to declare a retreat before combat. The Confederates cannot launch, they cannot intercept that Cav. They don't have anything that can. So I get to pull out of there, but now I've just opened up this big hole in the Union line. And retreating across those gullies is not good. Okay, there's no straggle check for this, so they can slip out. I don't know where that means I want to retreat to, though. But yeah, that gives me a successful check there. Now the good thing is the Union can pull these corps out of there. So one thing I want to do is I want to send McClellan down here. Because I got 2 corps I got to pull out of battle. I could do this with a generalized retreat, but I don't want to do a generalized retreat because of these poor suckers. I'm not sure I can get them out. And they would have to try. Well, actually, they wouldn't be in command, so they don't have to try. But I don't want to give up my entrenchments if I can help it, although they're beginning to look a little iffy, to tell you the truth, as well. I got problems. What about my Cav? Where do they want to run to? All right, so Lee just did a nice little action there, and that's going to put it over on the Union, and god damn, this is going to be hard to pull out of. Got myself in some trouble. Should not have attacked. Always play like McClellan. It's safer. Got a nice die roll. He was able to move his wagons and his 2 corps out of here, leaving that behind, moving back down here, now challenging that little Magruder force that went storming down there. And we're going to get an attack there. That's going to be defensive terrain, though. Some shifting around with some Cav and other forces as well. Confederates aren't really sure what's going on with all this string. But they're, pretty convinced there's probably a corps in each of those. But who knows? I might have a sneaker in there, because my Cav is up here. I don't have any eyes. I can't tell what the Union's doing. The Union wants to keep their mobility, so they're launching an attack, and we're doing an assault in the center. Honestly, this isn't revealed yet. These forces are going to be revealed, and we kind of know what Magruder has there. Of course, he does have a terrain advantage, and he's facing Franklin, who's doing the assault. With a fresh corps, better leadership, sounds pretty good. Might not have been very wise to assault with Franklin because I would be up on the top table with an advance anyway. I'm leaving this mistake to be. But it is costing me an extra loss on the CIC table because I'm 1-to-1, 29 to 18, with a shift against due to the defensible terrain. I think I may have missed it. So what's not clear is whether these are cumulative. The swamp crossing and the rough terrain. I think they should have been, and then there would have been another shift against the Confederates there. So I'm kind of being bad to the Union in a lot of ways here. Oops. Okay. So yeah, let's drop this from an assault. Let's make things a little nicer to them. That'll drop them to just 1 loss, I think. No reason to cheat them when I could just look at the charts and figure this out. So, except that I don't know that I'm going to get 1-to-1, but I should, right? Was this revealed? No, I withdrew before combat. Getting more than 1-to-1 is unlikely. So then that drops, doesn't make a difference, does it? Yeah, it does make a difference. So we take away a Confederate loss as well. That's why we wanted the assault. We wanted to do more Confederate hits, but no worries. Okay, so the Union takes a loss from the CIC chart, and now we go to the fire chart, and we're again 29, but only 18 for the Confederates. So we're way up at the top with a shift in our favor for having Franklin, who's a better leader than Magruder. And the Confederates are at the 18 table without a shift. So the Union get a shitty die roll, causing 1 Confederate loss. The Confederates get a pretty good die roll, causing 1 loss to the Union. So it's going to be a 2-to-1 situation. 1, 2, 1. And there's our victory track, very close. The thing is, these guys are attacking without, sequentially after these guys did. Took care of those, marking those losses. So the losses that were marked against D.R. Jones take effect here. So again, we have a stand versus an advance, which gets us to a 2. It's dropped to 1 because of the rain. And our strength is 26 to only 17 now, which isn't going to cause any losses. Now we shift over here, and we have, and we might have gotten a shift against us, but it's not going to cause any losses. Okay, over here for firepower, though, we're looking at 26, which puts us up on this table. No modifier, because we're looking at a 1 versus 1 leadership, to 17, which will be down here. So we're looking at these 2 tables. Shit. Did I fuck something up? Is there defensive terrain in this? No defensive terrain because again, woods don't help you in fighting. Okay. I'm just looking through it all. There's this whole list of modifiers, and it's very easy to miss when you're given a list like that. That's complicated. Okay, so we were looking at 25 at 5. That's a 1. Sorry, over here. And 3 on the 17 will be a 1 for the Union. So we're taking 1 more loss each. And I have to record those losses. Again, there's no second round. The advantage is the Union's here with the marker. Both sides have the marker. Either one can leave the space until after they go around without attacking. But I still got 2 big corps for the Confederates. Don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to punch in and bring Longstreet into play? Well, it's not 2 corps. It's the rest of Magruder and Longstreet. Are they going to come in here and try to fight this out? Where we're looking at plenty of forces. We're not going to be able to just brush through them the way we were able to in the Mississippi Fortress? Or do I try to do something clever and push through here and go for an outflank down south of the Union Army and really put it in some trouble? How many troops do I need? Is this real? If it's real, what is it? I look at these 2 corps and I say, wow, I've got those entire corps here. Probably didn't separate anything from there, so maybe the worst I'm facing is like a cav. So I could probably send a small infantry unit, maybe a brigade or something, into there, and still have fairly heavy force hitting here. Remember, Lee isn't penalized the way, he doesn't have the same kind of command restrictions. He can move all his units wherever he likes. And of course, Porter's not attacking. So that's the exciting end of this video. as we're a little over halfway through the battle, but the exciting parts are ahead, right? So, yeah. One thing, you know, for people who are like, great campaigns of the American Civil War are so great. I can't make a judgment on how well the historical battles work out in it, but a half day of fighting here resulted in the same kind of small losses that you see in stack versus stack combat there. It just feels more organic to me using the areas for combat than otherwise. Although, you know, if you're looking at something like Gettysburg or something, this might not, you might not be facing, you know, the capability of, I'm trying to find words that mean anything to me. Yeah, I mean, there you'd be blowing it up to such a tactical level that that's just not right for this kind of game. The whole point to this game is that it is at the operational level. So I don't think you'd want to try to move it to that tactical level, even as a thought experiment. This game is using a much, much smaller scale than they usually do. Something a little closer, I think, to the great campaigns of American Civil War. But what I was trying to get to is the losses feel about like the kind of losses that you get in that game. So if that game's accurate and historical, then this one is also, you know, along that same lines. I would expect that the game was actually probably tested well enough, not to be in alignment with the great campaigns of American Civil War, but that both systems have been tested well enough to kind of kink out any bugs in terms of great loss factors. I don't know what the casualty rates are, but then again, I can't make a historical judgment on this without, you know, looking it up and saying, well, what did happen in those battles? But in terms of the proportions lost, they feel about right. You know, which is to say, a lot less than I get when I play tactical games, even games that give significant limitations, like the Civil War Brigade series does, in terms of the amount of pressing your attack you can do. One other thing I was thinking about, I went for a walk today, hurt my ankle again, it just never heals. I also got close enough to some turkey peeps that I could have grabbed me a handful of them. Mom was not happy. She probably would have killed me if I tried, but, you know, she was dragging her wing and doing the whole dance in front of me, trying to get me away from them, trying to explain to this turkey that, yeah, you know, I'm not actually gonna grab your peeps. I'm not interested in that. You don't have to go through this whole show. Go protect them. Someone else, like, you know, maybe I don't know, a cat or something will grab one while you're dragging me off. But anyway, Jesus, now I forgot what the fuck I was gonna say. God damn it. I get so caught up in whatever I'm babbling about that I forget what I came to the video for. Yeah, there was something else I was thinking about today that came to mind, and it was really interesting. And I can't for the life of me remember it. I'll turn the camera off and we'll see if I remember it then. But now that I've said that, I'm jing. I was able to remember. So one of the things that I really like about this this particular scenario is that core activation table. I feel like that really does a good job, not of showing McClellan's incompetence, but actually something that probably is more applicable throughout the game, is something to prevent units from moving at will, at player's will. There are other factors in the game that do, getting locked into a combat situation, stuff like that. But I feel like a little bit of tinkering and playing around with this might come up with some really interesting command and control type rules. Taking this as a baseline, this is probably a little bit less effective than you'd want, but you might want something where, it's hard to get your units moving towards an objective, towards whatever. And even once they do move, they might run into problems. Those problems, especially when crossing a river or something, could end up pretty major, and that's just a facet that I'm more interested in, which is delays in movement. That's one thing I really do like about Great Campaigns of the American Civil War, is that movement uses a die roll. Most war games, you have a fixed movement rate. This one you do too. And the player kind of controls their movement far too much. I really like the idea of games where the movement rate is somewhat more variable, because that's often the biggest thing at any scale, really, towards determining who wins the battle, is who got there fastest with the mostest, right?